Our next speaker won an Oscar. It's the craziest thing. All my entire life, I always imagined, I'd be in the bathroom alone, looking in the mirror and doing my faux Oscar acceptance speech all by myself. But this guy actually did it. But above and beyond that, let's go ahead and read some of the great things about this man. He's an honors graduate of UCLA School of Film and Television. In 2008, he won an Oscar for his screenplay Milk, which stars Sean Penn as outspoken gay activist Harvey Milk. Have you seen it? An amazing film. Founding board member of the American Foundation for Equal Rights, and he's on the board for the Trevor Project. Featured in Out Magazine's 40 Under 40 People to Watch, repeatedly been named one of the 50 most powerful LGBT individuals in America, and he's adorable. Please welcome to the stage, Dustin Lance Black.
Hey y'all, how are you? Hey look, it's notes about myself. I'm gonna change my bio real quick. Make myself taller. How are you? How's it been? How's the conference been? Yeah? Cool. This is the craziest high school ever, right? It's super ritzy. I didn't go to a high school like this. I actually went to a high school right down the road in Salinas, California. Do people know where that is? Salinas. So here's the thing. I got this phone call to come and speak here like a couple of months ago. And I thought, they said, can you come speak on May 11th? And I thought, I have literally 3 films going into production. And I knew I'd have to work and shoot last night. In fact, I was on the set until 2 a.m. last night. And I thought, how am I going to do this? And then I thought to myself at the very next second, how could I not? Right? There is something that I absolutely need from you guys. And I'm going to get to it. It has a little something to do with leadership. And you have something around this idea of leadership that I need from you before you go home tonight. And I'll talk a little bit about what leadership means to me as I started thinking over this idea of leadership, because I think a lot of people out there think, oh, well, Lance is one of the leaders of the gay and lesbian movement, right? He's out there suing the state of California in federal court and marching on the steps of the Capitol and all this sort of thing and giving these speeches. But if you know me, like my mom knows me, you know that I'm absolutely not that kind of leader at all, right? Leaders are these people who have big, strong voices and they don't sweat when they're on stage, which I will. I'll be doing both of those things. Or like when my mom dropped me off for school, the very first time I went out to school, it was kindergarten. My mom dropped me off, and I remember walking into this kindergarten class, right? And there was all these kids there, and they were coloring within the lines. And I started to have a panic attack. I started to sweat, and I couldn't breathe. And they sent me to the principal's office. And it was 2 years in that principal's office before I could be in a classroom. And for those 2 years, I was with that principal out in San Antonio, Texas. And what I did was follow her day after day after day to classroom after classroom. And she would walk around with a paddle, and it had holes drilled in it. And you'd see a terrified kid come out of the classroom. And the kid would bend over and be screaming, and that paddle would come down, and because of the holes, it would be screaming, and she'd hit that kid in the ass. And I thought, my God, I don't have it in me to ever be anything like that. That's what a leader is, right? They rule with fear, right? They scare the hell out of you. And this was Texas public education, so she also had really big hair. Yeah. And so I thought, okay, well, that's what a leader is in school. And then it was really maybe a few months later that I was in church. And I grew up Mormon. I grew up Mormon in Texas. And so I go into my good Mormon church. And if you're out in Texas and far away from Salt Lake City, they lower a screen and they beam in the prophet of the church by a satellite. And this was sort of new technology back then. And the prophet at the time was this white-haired man named Spencer W. Kimball. And I want to read to you what little 6-year-old Lance heard that day in church. He said, "Tonight the laws of God and the..." Oh no, that's someone else's quote. Come back to that. He said, "Homosexuality is sin. Next to the crime of murder comes the sin of sexual impurity." I was 6 years old, and I heard that word homosexuality, and I lit up. Because I thought, my God, that's a lot of syllables. It has an X in it. It's going to be fantastic in Scrabble. I just have absolutely no idea what it means. Right? And so then we were also in the military, and I remember I would heard all these other words, right? Like faggot, cocksucker, turd burglar. The military ones were always the most colorful. Didn't know what they meant. But one day in church, one of them came spilling out of my mouth, and I remember I was around this group of women who were in a group called the Relief Society, and they brought over one of the priesthood holders, and he explained to me in detail what homosexuality was. And now, all of a sudden, I was thrilled. I thought, well, that's a fantastic idea, except that he followed it up by saying that it was a sin and that I'd be going to hell. And if anyone found out, I would bring great shame to myself and great shame to my family. So all of a sudden, I knew that at school, and this is what my leaders were saying in church, right? So at school, they were ruling by fear. In church, they were ruling by saying I was going to hell. And in politics, there was a woman named Anita Bryant. Has anyone seen the movie Milk? There's only one right answer to that, by the way. So, yeah, if you haven't, go see it. But Anita Bryant is in it. And she was out there knocking down all the very first laws protecting gay and lesbian people in this country. And she's the one who said this. She said, when she beat the very first law protecting gay and lesbian people in Florida, she said, "Tonight, the laws of God and cultural values of man have been vindicated. The normal majority have said enough, enough, enough." Normal. What the hell does that mean? Why are we so afraid of difference? The normal majority. And so all of a sudden, all these politicians on both sides of the aisle jumped in with anti-gay quotes of their own. And that leads us to where we were, where we've been. You know, I hear my leaders at school ruling by fear, at church saying we're going to hell, and in government saying we're second-class citizens. So as a young kid, when I thought of leadership, I was rather afraid, and I thought, okay, well, what are my options? My only options here are I can hide, I can try not to excel, I can try not to get noticed. You know, and for me, hiding meant starting a small Mormon family of, say, 20 or 30 kids. That wasn't in the cards for me. Or I could take my own life. And I think we know that that's all too common, that LGBT kids are 4 times more likely to attempt suicide than their straight brothers and sisters, and 9 times more likely if they come from unaccepting environments. And, you know, thankfully for me, that's not how the story ended. Thankfully for me, my good Mormon mother started having an affair with a very hot, much younger Army soldier who only went to his Catholic church at Christmas. And he had orders to ship out to a place called San Francisco. And my mom sat me down one day and was like, I think I was like 13 or so, and she said, I know we'd be uprooting you, and you know, I don't know how you feel about this, moving from San Antonio to San Francisco. And I said, yes. And all of a sudden, she said, I think my mom was in love for the very first time, really, truly in love. And we left the Mormon church, and we left Texas, and we came right up here. And we actually settled down a little further south. We settled down in Salinas. But, you know, she thought, I'm going to cure my son of his shyness problem. And this is how she did it. She said, I'm going to put him in drama club. Yeah, I know. I don't know what my mom thought drama club was all about, but I liked it. I liked it a lot. And at one point, right near here, I had a drama instructor, and he could see that I think I needed to hear this story. And maybe could tell other people in our little group of apprentices needed to hear this story. And this drama instructor played me a tape, an audio tape. And this had been recorded many, many years earlier. But it had been recorded in my hometown of San Antonio, Texas. And so he played it for me, and I'm going to try and read it for you here. I wrote it down. It went like this. Somewhere in Des Moines or San Antonio, there was a young gay person who all of a sudden realizes that he or she is gay, knows that if the parent finds out, they'll be tossed out of the house. The classmates will taunt the child. And the Anita Bryants are doing their bit on TV, and that child has several options: staying in the closet, suicide. And then one day that child might open up the paper and it says homosexual elected in San Francisco. And that child has 2 new options. One is to go to California or to stay in San Antonio and fight. You've got to elect gay people so that that child and the thousands upon thousands like that child know there is hope for a better world. There's hope for a better tomorrow. And his name was Harvey Bernard Milk. Thank you. Who answered that? And I was like 14 years old, and all of a sudden, there was this guy, and he wasn't leading with fear or anger. He was leading with hope. And for the first time in my entire life, his brand of hope actually included me. And guess what? It saved my life. It saved my life. It gave me hope to start to excel. It gave me hope to start to do better in school, to want to be noticed. And I even started to want to make out with boys, and I didn't quite come out. But when I finally went down to UCLA, I started sort of flirting around, and there was, you know, like going to West Hollywood and doing that sort of thing. And there was this one guy who I had a big crush on. He was a little bit older. He was a grad student, and he wasn't really giving me the time of day though. And I remember I was all thinking about that on my trip home for Christmas once, over Christmas break. It's my senior year already, and I was thinking about him, and I was thinking about him so much, and I realized on the flight, what the heck am I going to talk about with my parents? Because they didn't know. What am I talking about with my mom and stepdad, my big army mom and stepdad? Because they were living out in Virginia now. When the plane landed, before I knew it, I'm in Washington, D.C. airport. My stepdad's there picking me up and driving me home through the woods. And I see my mom. She greets me at the door like she always does. And right beside her is my big brother. And my mom gives me a big hug. I remember thinking, gosh, I wonder if she'd hug me like that if she knew. And right next to her, I looked at my brother. And, you know, he and I are really different. He's always been really into, Megadeth and killing animals for fun, watching cars go in circles. He would make endless fun of my NSYNC posters, and I tried to cover them up with Paula Abdul posters, and that didn't work for him either. And, you know, we're literally like oil and water, me and my big brother, and I thought, would this family ever accept me for me? And I just thought, you know, I don't know that I want to do this. I went through Christmas morning, opened the presents as fast as I could, went through Christmas dinner as fast as I could, and went upstairs, closed my door, and was like, I did it. I got through all of Christmas in these 2 days without having to say a word, and then I hear this sound coming, this click-clack sound down the hall. And I've heard my entire life. My mom had polio, so she walks on crutches and braces, and there's this click-clack sound coming from down the hall. I'm getting nervous just thinking about it. And the door opens, and she comes in and she sits down in the corner of the bed. Now, this is not unusual. This is what me and my mom would do. Just stay up all night long, talking. It's just all of a sudden, I have no clue what we can talk about. So I let her set the agenda. And she was really, really angry about this thing called Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Does anyone remember that? Oh, yeah. Right. And she was military. So she was like, talking about it, she was angry about it, not because it excluded people, because she didn't think that these gay and lesbian people should be allowed in her military, whether they kept it a secret or not. Right? She'd been taught her whole life that this is a sin, and this is wrong, and these people are broken and second-class citizens, and she's going on and on about it, and I am sitting there on the floor in front of her, and I don't want to come out of the closet, I'm not ready yet, and so I feel my eyes starting to burn, and I feel the wetness starting to build up. And before I know it, the tears start to pour down my cheeks, and I'm praying she won't see it, and I look up into her eyes, and she's staring right into mine. And she knows. She's a mom, she knows. And I can see in her eyes, her looking at me and thinking, what have I done? What have I done that broke my precious son? What have I done wrong, and is there any way to fix this? And we didn't fix it on that trip. Honestly, I went home brokenhearted. And I think she was brokenhearted. And when I got home, I remember I saw my friends at college, and I thought, they could tell something was wrong, but I didn't want to talk about it. And they said, hey, just relax, it's fine, we'll just, it's your mom, she's coming out for graduation soon, right, in a couple of months. So we'll just make her some salads and some pasta, right? Cool, relax.